In a late number of the Democratic Review, there appeared a very excellent paper by Mr. JDTheCuck on the subject of magazine literature, a subject much less thoroughly comprehended here than either in France or in England. In America, we compose now and then agreeable essays and other matters of that character, but we have not caught the true magazine spirit. A thing neither to be defined nor described. Mr. JDTheCuck's article, although piquant, is not altogether to our mind. We think he places too low an estimate on the capability of the magazine paper. He is inclined to undervalue its power, to limit unnecessarily its province, which is illimitable. In fact, it is the extent of subject, and not less in the extent of variety of tone, that the French and English surpass us to so good a purpose. How very rarely are we stuck with an American magazine article as with an absolute novelty. How frequently the foreign articles so affect us. We are so circumstanced as to be unable to pay for elaborate compositions, and after all, the true invention is elaborate. There is no greater mistake than the supposition that a true originality is a mere matter of impulse or inspiration. To originate is carefully, patiently, and understandingly to combine. The few American magazinists who ever think of this elaboration at all cannot afford to carry it into practice for the paltry prices offered by our periodical publishers. For this and other glaring reasons, we are behind the age in a very important branch of literature. A branch which, moreover, is daily growing in importance, and which, in the end, not far distant, will be the most influential of all departments of letters. We are lamentably deficient not only in invention proper, but in that which is more strictly art. What American, for instance, in penning a criticism, ever supposes himself to be called upon to present his readers with more than the exact stipulation of his title, to present them with a criticism and something beyond? Who thinks of making his critique the work of art itself, independently of its critical opinions? A work of art, such as all are the more elaborate and most effective reviews of Macaulay? Yet these reviews we have evinced no incapacity to appreciate when presented. When presented, the best American review ever penned is miserably ineffective when compared with the notice of Montague's Bacon. And yet this latter is in general a piece of tawdry sophistry, owing everything to a consummate, to an exquisite arrangement, to a thorough and just sufficiently comprehensive diffusiveness, to a masterly climaxing of points, to a style which dazzles the understanding with its brilliancy, but not more than it misleads it by its perspicuity. Causing us so distinctly to comprehend that we fancy we coincide, in a word, to the perfection of art, of all the art which Macaulay can wield, or which is applicable to any criticism that a Macaulay could write. It is, however, in the composition of the class of magazine papers which come properly under the head of tales that we evince the most remarkable deficiency in its skill. If we accept first Mr. Hawthorne, secondly Mr. Sims, thirdly Mr. Willis, and fourthly one or two others, whom we may as well put mentally together without naming them, there is not one even a respectably skillful writer on the side of the Atlantic. We have seen, to be sure, many very well constructed stories, individual specimens, the work of American magazines, but these specimens have invariably appeared to be happy accidents of construction. Their authors in subsequent tales have always evinced an incapacity to construct. We have been led to a comparison of the American with the British ability in tale writing by a perusal of some magazine papers, the composition of the author of Chartley, and The Invisible Gentleman. He is one of the best of the English journalists and has some of the happiest peculiarities of Dickens, whom he preceded in the popular favor. The longest and best of his tale, if properly so called, is Peter Snook. And this presents so many striking points for the consideration of the magazinists that we feel disposed to give an account of it in full. Peter Snook, the hero, and the beau ideal of a Cockney, is a retail linen draper in Bishopgate Street. He is, of course, a stupid and conceited, although at bottom a very good little fellow, and always looks as if he were frightened. Matters go on very thrivingly with him until he becomes acquainted with Miss Clorinda Botkin, a young lady owing to almost 30, and withal a great proficient in the mysteries of millinery and mantua making. Love and ambition, however, set this little gentleman somewhat beside himself. "If Miss Clorinda would but have me," says he, "we might divide the shop and have a linen drapery side, and a haberdashery and a millinery side, and one would help the other. There'd be only one rent to pay and a double business, but it would be so comfortable too." Thinking thus, Peter commences a flirtation to which Miss Clorinda but doubtfully responds. He escorts the lady to White Conduit House, Bagnigge Wells, or Bagnigge Wells, and other genteel places of public resort, and finally is so rash as to accede to the proposition on her part of a trip to Margate. At this epoch of the narrative, the writer observes that the subsequent proceedings of the hero are gathered for accounts rendered by himself when called upon, after the trip, for explanation. It is agreed that Miss Clorinda shall set out alone for Margate, Mr. Snook following her after some indispensable arrangements. These occupy him until the middle of July, at which period, taking passage in the Rose of June, he safely reaches his destination. But various misfortunes here await him, misfortunes admirably adapted to the meridian of a Cockney feeling and the capacity of Cockney endurance. His umbrella, for example, and a large brown papal parcel containing a new pea-green coat and a flower-patterned embroidered silk waistcoat, are tumbled into the water at the landing place, and Miss Botkin forbids him her presence in his old clothes. By a tumble of his own, too, the skin is rubbed from both of his shins for several inches, and the sergeant, having no regard for the lover's cotillion engagements, enjoins him on total abstinence from dancing. A cockchafer, Moreover, it's the trouble of flying into one of his eyes, and worst of all, a tall military-looking shoemaker, Mr. Last, has taken advantage of the linen draper's delay in reaching Margate to ingratiate himself with his mistress. Finally, he is cut by Lass and rejected by the lady, and has nothing left for it but to secure a homeward passage in the Rose of June.